Okay, so we should be live very soon. I got my eye on the prize, eye on the actual stream on actual YouTube for actual realization, I guess. Says we're live. YouTube has yet to. Oh, something's happening.
Something's happening.
So something's happening. Make sure Discord's
happening. Oh my god, guys, it's happening.
It's happening. All right, I think we're good. Isn't that fancy? Isn't that smancy? Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Primus Prime Time Live. It's that time. It's Primus Prime. I'm never saying that again. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, pretty dumb.
And here with us today is the co-host with the co-most. I've already used that joke before. Twisted Ambition. Let me guys know if you can hear Twisted properly or if the music's...
oranges with my mouth.
How else would you do it? I guess you could, like, bother to get your fingers all juicy trying to freaking open an orange. But nobody likes that. So I respect the mouth technique.
You get them juicy fingers.
Exactly. My sentiments exactly. You don't want that. Nobody wants that. You know, no one cares if your mouth gets juicy. That's the whole point of eating an orange. So, oh boy.
Fuck. Oh, okay, let's see what we got in chat. We have Ben Cox, we have Percy, Karma, we got my old personality, Tear of Death. Alright, what's up, man? And then there's that Rex dude. We don't talk about him anymore.
Oh, jeez. And here's the thing about chat. The topic of today is a very interesting topic, and it involves getting rid of a long-standing rule in the Primus Prime 22 chat, and that's talking about Transformers is no longer a bannable offense. However, I don't want to look at the chat this episode. This episode is one that
I'm there. I'm
yeah,
looking.
yeah. I would like.
Funny. You got some people that aren't usually in your chats in here.
Because it's a Transformer episode. I hope they realize that today is going to be pretty much devoted to just talking crap about Transformers, but, you know.
IDW, like the whole IDW Universe in particular.
Oh, yeah.
Not just Transformers.
Oh, yeah. So, the IDW Universe had a big place in my heart. I left it because it became crap, and now it's ending. And, typically I would say, oh, I don't want to talk about Transformers, but you know, this Transformers thing, this IDW Universe, it was like one of my, what's the word? It was key, you know. I remember reading Maximum Dinobots before going to middle school and eating Hot Pockets, and now every time I read that book, I have this taste of Hot Pockets in my mouth, you know. So, the IDW
How often do you read it?
How often do I like reread it? Not often, but whenever I do, I always get the taste of that Hot Pocket.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the IDW Universe held a big place in my life. It's pretty much middle school through high school into a bit of college, and then it became terrible, and now it's ending. So it's sort of like, you know, in season 1 of The Walking Dead, where Morgan, I believe his name is, had his wife, and it's like he loved his wife. His wife was the most important thing in his world for him, and then she became a zombie. And so now he has to put down the zombie, but he's having difficulty with putting down the zombie because, you know, when he sees a zombie, all he sees is what he grew up with, the love of his life. That's my relationship with the IDW. That's how I feel about the IDW Universe ending because, you know, it was something I loved until it just became this terrible monster that was like, I didn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. And now I know it's ending. I'm like, oh man, 75% of this stuff's and as a whole is good, but like the concentrated 25% of absolute crap is the most recent things in recent memory. So I have very conflicting emotions about this. I see someone's asking about turning up Twisted's volume.
I'm seeing anything I can do about it. I've already turned my condenser up.
I actually hear you very well on my headphones. Well, no, let me know if that fixes anything. Comment X. But yeah, because it was such a big thing in my life, And now it's ending. I felt, I had to do some little ode to it, some little eulogy, I guess. And today, that's what I'm going to devote this Primus Primetime stream for. I'm going to talk about sort of the rise and the fall of the IDW Universe. Partly, I'm not really going to talk about lore. I'm going to be talking more of, like, corporate stuff, sort of how company decisions like, oh, we're going to cancel this title. Oh, we're going to start 3 new series, stuff like that. And sort of how you sort of see this trend of such a small little project got way out of hand, got way too carried away by the current wave of how modern comic writers are today, and then it just became crap. So, you know what? That's what I'm going to talk about. So, Twisted, how much would you say you know about things like Transformers and G.I. Joe? As sort of a... No, I'm not talking about, starting a Transformers lore channel about it, but like, compared to the general... I guess American, how much would you say you know about Transformers and G.I. Joe?
Okay, so I remember watching Gen 1 of Transformers and Gen 1 of G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe growing up. So that's kind of where my knowledge starts and ends. I've poked around with it a little bit over the years, and then I met this fucking weirdo online that talked nonstop about it. It made me read like extra shit about the KISS players. That's about my knowledge. Transformer goes from Gen 1 to the KISS players and other bullshit ripoffs. That's where my knowledge jumps to.
Sounds good. Sounds like a good solid foundation. I like it.
No, it's terrifying.
So
I know about a pool of gold, the inconsistency in story writings, and the KISS players.
The KISS players. Well, I think you have the basic amount of knowledge needed, because I'm not gonna...
Yeah, that's right. The spiral vagina as well.
That's a very crucial part of Transformers lore, let me tell you. But yeah, so whenever I talk about sort of like some decisions they make, like when I say Megatron became an Autobot, you'll understand what that means and not say what's an Autobot, what's a Megatron. So okay, we're good there.
What's a bot?
What's a bot? It's most of my followers on Twitter.
That's not funny.
Yeah, it's not true either, so...
That's a crime.
It is. So let's...
I gotta report your Twitter now.
Oh, gotta report, yeah. I mean, I gotta be banned at some point. How many lynching gay jokes have I made on Twitter?
Hey, General Sam recently did that about Chick-fil-A.
Oh yeah, and then he got... Yeah. Alas. I was actually thinking of, I had an idea of, what if, in order to engage people more in Primus Primetime, we do something to engage the community? How about something like an art contest? Oh, but we have to draw the same thing so we can, judge the contest. Like, if someone draws like a huge landscape, but someone draws a unique character design, it's hard to compare the two. Let's just draw one thing. We all have an art competition of drawing one thing, and that, why don't we show our respect to the religion of Islam by having a Drawing the Prophet Muhammad contest? I was thinking of...
Yes!
If that doesn't get us banned, nothing will. Jesus.
Yes!
God. Oh, man.
Ah! Praise be unto him!
Oh, God. Oh, Allah.
Oh, Allah?
Oh, Allah.
Anyway, continue with the IDW and
right.
not in Islam.
Right. So I have a little timeline here. I'm going to talk about sort of the progression of the company in the context of the IDW universe, and just sort of reflect on how everything came to an end. And I have you Twisted here to sort of not look like I'm insane talking to nothing in the middle of the air. So.
Oh jeez, I just need to be quiet and then the rest of the show.
No, don't do that.
Just need to be quiet. Oh yeah, I know some of the Beast Wars too. Came in, he posted a comment.
All right, so we'll start with the prelude, sort of 2004 or 2005-ish. So Hasbro owns things like G.I. Joe and Transformers, and they have to, give the license to make comics for these franchises to other comic companies, because there's no Hasbro comic company. They have other companies do it, and
affiliates.
Yes, and around 2004, G.I. Joe was with a company called Devil's Due, Transformers was with a company called Dreamwave, and in 2004, Dreamwave just goes off the rails completely insane because one of the higher ups there is like taking the money from the company and using it to buy like expensive stuff. They're lying about stuff there. You have this dude doing art, and he's actually hiring like ghost artists to do stuff for him and then not paying for them. Dreamwave is a crazy story that I might actually tell another day, but Dreamwave was insane. And then eventually, surprise, surprise, they got bankrupt because of terrible business practices. And Hasbro was like, well, now we don't have anyone to make Transformer comics, but hey, this company, IDW, they're starting up. Why don't we give IDW the license? I believe it's Chris Ryle who was really collecting licenses for IDW at the time. He was the sort of head honcho, I believe. And I haven't done like extensive research on this. I just did a basic outline of what I kind of know. So if I get like position titles wrong or whatever, then, you know, sue me, whatever. But so IDW is collecting licenses. They see there's a vacancy for Transformers. They say, hey, we can make some Transformer comics, you know, cha-ching, cha-ching. And Hasbro's like, oh, okay, you can make some Transformer comics, bruh. Here's the license. And IDW is like, cool, we're going to do this slowly. We're not going to go crazy with this. And we're going to hire pretty much one dude to sort of make the direction of our new, unique IDW Transformers continuity. And that dude is Simon Furman. And Simon Furman's a big name in the Transformers sphere because he wrote the best parts of the original Marvel Transformer comic. He wrote a lot of good stuff from the Beast Wars cartoon. He's pretty much the Transformers guy because typically when you have a franchise, the Batman guy, or maybe that's not the best example, but the Superman guy is the person who created it and not like the second writer that came around. But the dude who invented Transformers doesn't give a crap about Transformers and says, hey man, it was just a job. So the fans sort of give their attention to Simon Furman for being the first writer that actually gave a crap. But they get Simon Furman and like, okay, Simon Furman, you are a prodigy of the 80s and 90s. You're in Oh.
It's like, okay, Simon Furman. Yes, that is my name.
Yeah.
My name is Simon Furman.
Simon Furman.
Could be Simon. Like meet someone, you just have to introduce yourself by their full name every time.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I just tickled.
No, that's good. But they get Furman in. You know, I'll call him Furman from this point on. And they get Furman in, and like, all right, we want you to design this Transformers universe. Take it slow. Let's just do a series of mini-series. You know, you're going to have a 5-issue miniseries here, then follow that up with another 5-issue miniseries. We're not going to go crazy with any ongoing series, but let's just start with a miniseries. And in 2005, the first issue of the Transformers IDW continuity comes out called Transformers Infiltration Number 0. And it's like a little, you know, your basic Transformers story. There are some kids on Earth. They accidentally find a transforming ambulance, and all of a sudden they're caught up in, you know, this Cybertronian war. It's typical Transformers stuff.
Shit, we stumbled into some bad shit, guys. Oh no! I'm reading the Transformers Legends manga right now.
Oh, are you?
There's fucking cat bots and stuff. I'm liking this.
There is. It's pretty good.
That dog bot has a fucking red rocket wiener. What the hell?
Oh.
Oh damn, she's hot.
But
she's a hot bot.
2006 is where Furman really kicks up, you know, creating this universe. Infiltration finishes in 2006. Around this time, they make Transformers Stormbringer, which Furman's also writing, and like people are like, oh, I don't want Transformers on Earth. Oh, I hate human characters. Why can't we have any story on Cybertron? And Furman's like, okay, here's a story that takes place on Cybertron at the same time as Infiltration, and Cybertron's freaking dead, and the Transformers aren't able to set foot on it because it's so radioactive from all the war. And it's like, oh god, but that's...
But they're robots. How does radioactivity hurt them?
It's like energon radioactivity.
Oh, okay. Good. Okay, I'll accept that.
It's the magic word.
Yeah. Oh, it's energon. Okay. Yeah, energon cubes are everywhere. Yeah.
There we go.
I'm good with this.
Actually, energon cubes are not everywhere because they established that energon, they pretty much used up most of their energon. So what energon there is, they're like synthesizing. They're making this fake stuff that they're just barely running by on.
Oh, so it's like that jizz they use in pornos.
Is it?
The porn stores are running out. They're trying to produce, but it's not happening fast enough. So they just make like little bottles of fake jizz for the money shots.
Don't say you don't learn anything on Primus Primetime, kids.
Which also the old stuff, the original stuff they used to make the fake cum was actually cancerous, and a lot of the old porn stars are dying of cum cancer.
Oh God.
That's a weird fact, Twisted Nose.
Well, the more you know. Knowing is half the battle.
Debbie Does Dallas got cancer from fake jizz money shots.
Oh boy.
I think it was Debbie Does Dallas. I think it was that girl. I'm gonna do some fact checking. Continue.
All right. While Stormbringer is going on, they also bring in Transformers Spotlight, where they're like, "Oh, we'll do one-shots. Like, here's a story about Shockwave. Here's a story about Optimus Prime."
Cancer.
And by doing all these spotlights, which Simon Furman is writing most of these, I think Nick Roche sometimes pops in here or there. I might be wrong about that, but Nick Roche is another writer who's going to pop up later down the line. Through these spotlights, he's sort of developing the universe more with, different characters in different places. So we're starting to construct a good Transformers universe. At the same time, IDW makes a mini-series called Hearts of Steel. And they say, okay, let's be clear here. Hearts of Steel does not take place in the main continuity, because everyone turns into, 19th century, 20th century, steampunk stuff. And it's sort of their idea of sort of like DC's Elseworlds. We're going to make a short little mini-series in an alternate timeline and stuff like that.
Oh.
Are you learning? What have you discovered?
CNN finally gave me a good report. Study: fellatio may significantly decrease the risk of breast cancer in women.
Well,
I'm gonna drop you that link in Discord.
In Discord? Oh boy.
Discord. That's good. No, I'm gonna show my wife later on. Sorry.
All right. But that Hearts of Steel bits.
Gonna get head. Yeah,
oh no. Well, I missed the money I could have made on this video.
Gonna get head. Yeah. Gonna get back. Yeah.
Right.
You told me to be twisted.
No,
I'm being twisted.
You're doing your job. but Jesus Christ. But yeah, that Hearts of Steel thing's kind of important. We'll bring that up later. But in 2006, they're like, this is not continuity. They're going to change their mind about that later on. 2006, Infiltration ends, and the sequel, Escalation, begins. Furman kind of has this motif of, I'm going to call every word, I'm going to call every title something-ation. Infiltration, Escalation, by 2000. Well, I don't think he made that. But by 2007...
What a god!
But 2007, he makes Transformers Devastation, which is another mini-series sequel to Escalation, and not to be confused with the video game. But 2000...
I bought that game. I need to play that.
It doesn't look like my cup of tea.
It's not. It's Transformers. It's not tea.
Oh, it's not tea. 2007, IDW is doing pretty good. Marvel's like, hey, why don't we do a little crossover? And there's this terrible 4-issue miniseries where the Avengers cross over with the Transformers in the IDW continuity. Not in the Marvel continuity, but in IDW continuity. Which means, hey, there's just Captain America in the IDW universe. Shows up, never seen again. But whatever. Eric Holmes,
wait,
what?
Captain America just showed up?
Yeah, because there was the Avengers crossover, and the Avengers crossover's in the IDW continuity. And they don't do anything like, oh, these Marvel people jumped from another universe. It's like, no, they were always here. There's just... So what happens is, the whole point of...
I'm not going to believe they were always fucking there. Have you seen some of the battles I have in Transformers? And the Avengers like, fuck it, not our problem.
Yeah, it doesn't... The plot is, the whole point of Furman's Transformers series, these series of mini-series, is that the Cybertronians are actually trying to be secretive, so they're actually trying to be in disguise, which is something you might have noticed that gets thrown away in a lot of Transformers stuff. But Furman's trying to do this. Oh, they're being Transformers. They're trying to be in disguise. The Decepticons want to destroy Earth for its resources, and strip mine it. Strip mine the ashes that's left of Earth, of the debris. But they want to do so like through pulling strings, like making countries hate each other and try to start World War III and stuff like that. And they find
your fucking car just said I'm a cuck. It must be the Russians.
Yeah. That's kind of the plot.
A bed transformer that's like whispering national secrets into the prime minister's ear, like, "You want to bomb Prussia? I'm gonna bomb Prussia."
You know, that's kind of the plot of Transformers Escalation, actually.
No.
But the Avengers crossover is like Megatron finds a thing Doctor Doom was making that makes people angry at each other, and like Latveria and Sankaria start attacking each other, and the Avengers are sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. to stop it, and the Autobots detect Decepticon activity, and like, we have to stop it too, and it's just that stuff, and then they go their separate ways, and then technically the superheroes are still in the universe somewhere. You would think they would pop up given what happens later on in the continuity, but they don't, because legal issues.
Damn, these bots are sexy in this fucking comic.
Yes.
Shit. I think I found a new fetish.
Okay, so a new miniseries is made, this time not by Simon Furman, but by Eric Holmes. He's actually the dude that wrote Batman Arkham Origins, the video game. But he writes a book called Transformers Megatron Origin. It details how the war began. It's actually interesting because I've heard it was actually originally supposed to be set in the Dreamwave continuity, in the continuity before IDW, but because Dreamwave completely blew up, they had to put it in IDW continuity and said, "Hey, we haven't really touched how the war began in Simon Furman's books anyway, so let's just bring in Megatron Origin." And then Devastation comes along. In 2008, all right, 2008 is where we're talking about G.I. Joe, because Devil's Due loses the license for G.I. Joe, and Hasbro's like, let's just give G.I. Joe over to IDW, because the Transformer comics IDW are making right now are pretty well received. People are liking them. So let's just have IDW handle G.I. Joe, and IDW is like, okay, sure, we'll continue the old Marvel G.I. Joe series, but we're also going to make our own G.I. Joe continuity. And in 2008, they released G.I. Joe number 0, which sort of previews that they're going to start a G.I. Joe continuity with 3 books. 2 of them are ongoing. One of them will be a miniseries. One's just called G.I. Joe, one's called G.I. Joe Origins, and one's called G.I. Joe Cobra. Cobra's the miniseries that's written by this writer called Mike Costa. And the whole premise of IDW's G.I. Joe is that G.I. Joe is a really, really secretive organization. You're not going to see them walk up to kids and give them a PSA about how knowing is half the battle. You're not going to see Cobra come onto the television across the world and say, we're going to use a remote to burn all your money. This is a serious world. It's more realistic. Cobra is an evil organization that's been in secret and pulling strings since the age of the Roman Empire. They've just sort of like this evil Illuminati group that have been in the shadows this whole time. G.I. Joe was made more recently as a U.S. special organization, but they're still secret. All the G.I. Joe members are technically legally dead as far as the public's concerned, but they really were snuck into the G.I. Joe base, and they're serving as G.I. Joe. And that was the presence. And the idea was the first part of IDW's G.I. Joe was going to be Cobra and G.I. Joe are going to be operating separately from each other, but because they're both secret organizations trying to do things covertly, they're eventually going to start stepping on each other's toes, and they're like, hey, I might not be the only secret organization out there. What's going on here? And the miniseries G.I. Joe Cobra was going to be about, about Cobra being secretive. G.I. Joe was going to be about G.I. Joe being secretive. And G.I. Joe Origins, written by the G.I. Joe creator Larry Hama, was going to, give you the new origins of these characters in this new universe. Meanwhile, with the Transformers, IDW is like, you know what? It's, with comics, you have, always in comics, the companies are always like, oh, we got to shake things up for we want new readers. So in order to get new readers, we're going to have to do a massive event that's going to change the status quo forever. So people will come in. Who cares if it pisses off people who are fans of the previous continuity? That's the nature of comics. That always happens in comics. Talk about what you want. I'm the only mod right now. Oh yeah. Let's see. So, IDW... Boy, Twist, are you there? If you're there, your mic's dead. Hold on, let's see what Twisted's up to. Twisted. Alright, everyone, I want you to go to Twisted's Twitter and spam him with something about his mic or whatever.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. You went quiet.
What do you mean I went quiet? Where did you go?
I've been here.
No, you haven't.
They're not saying anything in chat. I've always been here.
Uh-huh.
What did you miss not saying?
I mean, what did you miss not saying?
You stopped talking.
I stopped talking because I realized there was no feedback on your microphone. And we called out to you, and nothing happened. I told them to go spam your Twitter.
I'm getting messages. They don't like me.
Yeah, I doubt they're actually going to do it.
No. Continue.
What do you mean continue? When did you go?
Like 2 minutes ago.
What was I talking about 2 minutes ago?
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I had to go take care of something real fast because I just got home, immediately got back on the mic.
Right. Just
quick recap. Sorry about that.
Just a point for next time you have to go. You know, maybe make that known to me so I'm not ranting into dead air.
I did.
Well, if I didn't stop talking, that might be a sign that I didn't hear you.
I figured you were on a roll.
What point is being on a roll if I'm not talking to anybody?
I mean, I do live streams and just gotta talk to myself.
Oh boy. This is why I drink water.
No, you don't. I'm about to say you don't drink.
This is why I drink water.
Oh, I just noticed the Primus Primetime funnier than The Office.
That's been here since episode 2.
I just noticed it.
Amazing.
Anyways, about Colonel Armstrong taking over the Decepticon force.
You know what, Twisted? How has your day been?
I've been almost late to every Primus Primetime this month, and it's been hard.
Happens to the best of us. I was almost late to my own Primus Primetime today, so there's that.
Okay, you something about shaking things up for new creations, new creators.
Oh man, I think I've given up on this, man.
What now?
I think I've given up on the IDW talk, man.
No, give it up. You're on a roll.
I mean, long story short, terrible writers got into the company, started, you know, saying people shouldn't mourn 9/11 or that we should kill cis people with a bat, and then sales plummeted extremely, and then now we're done. Now the comics are ending.
I have that saved. The one where she's talking about beating cis people with a bat.
Yeah.
I fucking like spammed her.
I don't think that's proper etiquette to just. I don't think we need to. Well, you cannot like her, but that doesn't mean you have to stoop to her level. It just gives them ammo, man. It just gives them, like, it gives them an opportunity to say they're being harassed.
Well, good. They need to learn what the real world's like. Stop blaming this fancy land of, oh, my fake gender and fucking stuff.
What do you identify as, Twisted? What are your pronouns?
My pronouns? Male. Straight. American.
American is your pronoun?
Okay, so fuck you, fuck cis assholes, fuck your bullshit, get ready for a baseball bat to the teeth. Magdalene Visagio.
Yeah.
Mags Visags.
I mean, it's
on Twitter.
It's an infamous tweet, so...
I don't fucking know. It's your funeral? What the fuck? Sure, buddy. Feminism reasons you can't get laid. What?
What?
Fuck this bitch.
Jesus.
By the way, I posted something to the Primus Primetime chat in Discord.
Oh, did you? See, I don't really touch my Discord during streams because then the entire computer breaks down.
Really?
I'm gonna give it my go. Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I was reading that.
Hmm.
Ben Cox, Hasbro is probably going to find a new company to print their books and reboot everything. I would like to see a pre-war based series of even a story that tells about the battles Megatron and Optimus Prime had before they left Earth. What?
I see the Transformer fans are in the chat.
Before they left for Earth. Got you. Actually, I do remember there being something about that, wasn't there? Talk about Megatron being like an energon miner or something, and he got it. Like, honestly, whatever story that was brought me into to the Decepticon side. Like, yeah, they're just down with fuck this government that's screwing us.
Yeah, that was Megatron Origin. That's the book I talked about. How that's the one written by Eric Holmes, the Batman Arkham Origins writer.
Yeah. I'm surprised that a company will drive themselves out of business for politics. They won't. They're just like I think it's going to happen. They're just restructuring themselves. They're just ending this universe essentially. This is making them too much money to not print this stuff. Am I wrong in saying that?
You're very wrong. They've lost I think it's 90% of their revenue. Their main
at that point,
head honcho quit. This would be what I would get into towards the end of this, but I've given up.
I don't know why you gave up. I just had to go take a shit real quick. I just didn't think I wanted to announce that to the stream.
All right.
Take a shit.
This week has been stressful, man. It's the week before finals.
Oh yeah, it is.
So I've been going insane all week. I'm finally at a chill point. I only have one assignment left to do, and then I'm free. And then there's exams, but whatever.
I bet you wish you drank now. Come on, allow me to press you into taking that nice sip of whiskey.
I think I'm good. I don't have withdrawal symptoms from water. It's very hard to ruin my life with water.
I don't know. I think I can drown you and ruin your life with water.
How do people drown? I mean, you can just drink all the water.
I'm a duck in the ocean. I am the new Cobra Commander. I will rid this world of ocean water while making the zoo drink it.
Oh.
You won't die. You'll just drink it all.
Should I try to continue this story?
Yes.
I just need to have a little breakdown after. Just casually leaving.
You gotta casually break down in the middle of like your last IDW stream.
Yeah. So, where was I shaking things up?
The club.
A club?
Hey, hang on a second, hang on. Take a drink of water. All right, pissing off fans of the previous continuities where you left off.
So yeah, shaking things up about how they want to do a... So 2008, IDW saying, alright, this universe Furman's been carefully crafting. That's starting to get stale. We want something new. So let's take this writer, Sean McCarthy, and let's just make him do what is basically a Michael Bay movie with Generation 1 bodies. And just have this big explosive event. Let's have the Decepticons take over the world, destroy New York City. And I know how Furman set up this whole delicate universe about how the whole point of the universe is that it's robots in disguise, and that, you know, everyone's trying to be secretive. We're gonna blow that out of the water with McCarthy's story called All Hail Megatron. So, Furman, you have about a year to wrap up all the stories you wanted to do, and then you're out of here. We know you're a respected member of the Transformers community, but, you know, get out of here. We gotta have those new readers. So Furman's just like, okay. He writes Revelation as a sequel to Devastation, and that wraps up in a very rushed fashion all his stories out in space. And he isn't even allowed to write it as a proper miniseries. He writes it in 4 different Spotlight series. And then he makes a series called Maximum Dinobots, where he wraps up all his stories left on Earth. And, that has a bit better pacing than Revelation, but still, like, you can tell he's like, oh, I'm just being kicked out, you know, wife just divorced me and took half the universe. And so then 2008, McCarthy comes in with All Hail Megatron, with Megatron just taking over the Earth, which sort of spits in the face of how he previously wanted to go about things, but whatever. And then, of course, the Autobots eventually show up and kick the Decepticons out. And this raises the question of, where were the Avengers again? You know, how can this just happen? But it's like, okay, well, as long as we just remember that Avengers are legally owned by Marvel, and that we can't use the Avengers, okay, Megatron taking over the Earth, just killing like 1 billion humans, that's okay. It's not like there are other, it's not like G.I. Joes in this universe, right? That will change. Mic check. Are you there, Twisted?
I am here.
All right. All right. Just making sure. Let's see. So that brings us to 2009, and we're going to jump back to the G.I. Joe. IDW finally puts out the G.I. Joe comics. You know, their G.I. Joe ongoing, G.I. Joe Origins, G.I. Joe Cobra. Mike Costa's G.I. Joe Cobra goes great. Everyone loves it. It's like one of the best G.I. Joe stories like ever made. Let's see. Simon Furman wraps up his stories. Okay, All Hail Megatron leaves Earth sort of in this situation where there are Autobots stranded on Earth. The Decepticons really don't know what to do since Megatron's basically brain dead. He gets shot in the face during All Hail Megatron at the end. But it's like, okay, we have a new opening for a new series. Screw that doing mini-series crap. We're finally going to do a full-on Transformers series that's ongoing. And who best to write it than our G.I. Joe freaking fan favorite Mike Costa, who wrote the best G.I. Joe story ever. If he's really great at writing G.I. Joe, he should be really great at writing Transformers, right? Heck no. He's the worst, one of the worst Transformer writers I've ever seen. He does not get Transformers. Immediately he turns Optimus into this freaking emo, oh, I can never lead right, so I'm just gonna surrender to the humans. He kills Ironhide off in issue 1, and it says, let's just make Bumblebee the leader, because that's definitely in Bumblebee's character. Well, Bumblebee, since that ongoing series, has developed in other series, you know, this leadership vein in his blood, but that did not exist really before Mike Costa got put on Transformers. There are several interviews of him with like Transformer community websites, and he's like, you know, how do you write Transformers? You know, they don't have family. They're just robots. They don't really have feelings. And like, dude,
but they're partially biological. I mean,
Like, Costa, you write the best G.I. Joe I have ever seen. One of the worst Transformers I've ever seen, like, Jesus Christ. But he gets put in charge of Transformers. It's terrible. A lot of people start dropping out. And IDW's like, oh no, we did this huge big shakeup to bring in new readers. And now people are just dropping like flies. And so we enter in 2009 what I call the Costa years. 2009 to 2011. Before it was the Furman years, now we're in the Costa years. 2010... By 2010, IDW's in panic mode, right? They're like, okay, our Transformers are failing. We gotta try to develop this universe better. Let's bring in other writers. Let's make some more mini-series to complement the main series and try to bring the fans in. Let's reference continuity because Costa rarely referenced anything that happened before his own series. And people are like, oh, we like the original continuity. This seems almost like a reboot if it wasn't for the fact that you can, like, say All Hell Megatron happened in between. But these characters don't seem like the old characters. So they brought in Sean McCarthy, the dude who made All Hell Megatron. They brought him in to write a Drift miniseries about Drift, which was a character he created who was a Decepticon who became an Autobot and then has all these swords. So it was like, he's basically your typical middle schooler Transformers OC. They have Mike Costa write a Transformers Ironhide miniseries where he basically goes, haha, Ironhide's actually not dead. Here's this body that this dude made, and they injected the old Ironhide's memories into him, which technically means it's just a body that looks like Ironhide with a copy of his memories in. So technically Ironhide's still dead.
I'm about to say, like, I don't think it's how their spark works.
Yeah, that's not how it works. But
that's just kind of like, we're gonna take your broken heart and put in this other body's. We're just gonna like let it float loosey goosey to the other person's body cavity and let its heart and its mechanics work. And just gotta let this person kind of float around in there somewhere.
Yeah, the Ironhide miniseries I think is a really good. It never brings up the question of, is this really Ironhide? It's so easy to make sort of the ethical, like, philosophical, what does it mean to be someone, but it never brings it up. And like the stories never sort of touch on, yeah, Ironhide's still dead though. We're just talking to what is essentially a clone who thinks he's the original, even though he only has copies of his memories. It's like his actual memory. It's a lot of missed potential. But anyway, those miniseries were basically hit and run. You know, they were fun, they were decent. But the last ditch effort IDW tries to do to make the continuity interesting is a story called Transformers: Last Stand of the Wreckers, and they get Nick Roche, who's sort of like this. He was writing like the Spotlight issues back in 2006, and they also get a new co-writer for him called James Roberts, and James Roberts is this British dude who has been a fan of Transformers since the Marvel days, since the 80s, and he really liked writing fan fiction. And he wrote a really long fan fiction called Transformers Eugenesis, and everyone loved it. And it was like, it was a great fan fiction, and Hasbro/IDW or whatever, whoever, was like, hey, people are liking this dude's fan fiction, let's just make him a writer on the actual Transformers stuff. And he teams up with Nick Roche and writes Transformers: Last Stand of the Wreckers, and it might be one of the greatest Transformers stories ever. It's pretty dark, it's really mature, it's really witty. Last Stand of the Wreckers was great. Last Stand of the Wreckers was great. If you go to any forum today and someone's typing like, where should I start with the IDW universe? And you have a person who doesn't care about, you know, continuity. They'll say, oh, just read Last Stand of the Wreckers. It's God. in comic form. So Last Stand of the Wreckers, smash success, made James Roberts seem like one of the greatest Transformer writers in history. 2010, we can jump over to what G.I. Joe's doing. G.I. Joe's steadily continuing their comics. They make a little mini-series called Hearts and Minds that's pretty much a mini-series version of Transformers Spotlight, where they just take a random G.I. Joe character and tell their story. Mike Costa is actually brought on for Cobra 2, because people love Cobra so much. Like, hey, you can write G.I. Joe really good. It's just Transformers is another thing. Let's just have you continue writing G.I. Joe while you're working on Transformers. And Cobra 2 was originally going to be a mini-series, but then it just became an ongoing series because people liked it that much. It's like, okay. Then we go into 2011, which is sort of like an identity crisis for both Transformers and G.I. Joe, because IDW is like, okay, Last Stand of the Wreckers was a hit, but the main Transformers book still sucks. And also, we're sort of getting to the point in G.I. Joe where we really need to shake things up to get those new readers. So we could start with 2011. They tried to do a crossover called Infestation, where they have zombies from another universe invade other universes. And important thing to note is the Infestation event actually says that G.I. Joe and Transformers are completely separate universes. They're gonna throw that away eventually. Yeah. So the zombies fight the G.I. Joes, fight the Transformers. Transformers uses the Infestation zombie event as sort of like the lead up to, they want to make this really big event that will pretty much restart their Transformers series. Not reboot the continuity, but, you know, like sort of clean the slate and just get new writers and new series. You know, get Mike Costa out of there. So they sort of build it up. They have a little mini-series called Heart of Darkness where Galvatron's like, oh, something big and evil is coming. And then that goes up into what's called Transformers Chaos, the last story arc of Mike Costa's book. And IDW is like, okay, Costa, you're going to write the last story of your book. Also, we're going to take James Roberts from Last Stand the Records and make him your co-writer. So fans might not leave so early. So fans might see, oh, hey, James Roberts is going to be working on the main book. That's pretty cool. And so they do Chaos, and it's about, it's like take complete crap and then take an actual competent writer and mix it together. So it's just meh. But it's this, you know, the big conclusion. Galvatron dies, Cybertron's reborn, and like you can live on Cybertron again, and like that's the end of the ongoing series, and they'll pick up where that series left off in 2012. Actually, they end it with Optimus Prime saying, like, he breaks the Matrix in Chaos and just gives one half to Bumblebee and says, you know what, Bumblebee, you lead people how you feel you want to lead them, and gives one half to Rodimus and says, Rodimus, you lead people. I'm not gonna appoint one successor. Bumblebee, Rodimus, you gotta figure things out yourself. He becomes emo, flies out into space, and just wants to get away from the Cybertronians.
This reminds me of the story of Solomon, with like the two halves of the one baby.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I don't want this. Fuck it. Breaks it in half. Going, it doesn't work anymore. You realize that, don't you?
Mm.
That's not how machinery works.
Yeah.
I can't just snap a 1080 in half saying, well, here, you have 540. Here, you have 540. Everybody gets, I just keep snapping until you get like a fucking like one core processor. It doesn't work that way. The whole fucking thing's broken.
And yeah, Cybertron is broken from that. So they end, in 2011, they end, they, you know, take a little break from Transformers, say, alright, Optimus is gone. Oh, and another thing, they end the Autobot-Decepticon war. After Chaos, the war's over, the Decepticons lost, the end. The war's not going to stop up ever again, really. You're going to have a little bit of small conflicts from here until 2018, but the war is done. It's over with. Cybertron is habitable, Autobots and Decepticons are starting to get along, and you can kind of see how 2011, we're almost 7 years without the Autobot-Decepticon war, yet still having Transformer comics. So they're trying to do as much as possible to make that time period interesting. Today they're having difficulty, and that's sort of going to bring into the fall of why they're going to stop making comics. But yeah, so that ends with a clean slate. We'll pick back up on Transformers, but 2011 for G.I. Joe is interesting because they're like, oh, we got to do something to bring in new readers. You remember how Transformers had this old secret operation thing, and then had this big event where everyone went into the public, and it sort of like made the old fans angry? Let's do that exactly. So in 2011, Mike Costa's Cobra ends with a G.I. Joe agent freaking shooting a bullet through Cobra Commander's head. 2011, Cobra Commander dies. So that shakes things up quite a bit. It makes Cobra like, oh crap, what do we do? They eventually have this thing called Cobra Civil War, where they have this competition to kill as many G.I. Joe agents as possible, because this sort of marks where G.I. Joe and Cobra are finally like, oh, you exist. So now they're finally fighting each other. And Cobra's like, we've discovered this American secret organization. We have to, in order to decide who's the best leader, we got to kill as many G.I. Joes as possible. And eventually this dude called Crake wins. And Crake doesn't exist outside the IDW comics. It's an original character they made. And it's like, Crake is now the new Cobra Commander.
I'm the original Hedgehog.
Oh.
Crake is just a hedgehog.
What's a hedgehog? Oh, like the Sonic. Oh, yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, after Cobra Civil War, where Craig becomes commander, Craig says, you know what, I'm tired of this whole staying in the shadows crap. Let's freaking invade Thailand. It's not Thailand, but it's actually more Burma. This fake country called Nanjiao, which if you look at it on a map is just Burma. Let's just invade Burma, take over its territory, and try to get a seat at the United Nations. So Cobra just throws away the whole let's be a secret organization since the time of the Roman Empire, because we got to get those new fans in. So they invade Burma. I'm going to call it Burma. It's called Nanjiao. But they take it over. G.I. Joe's like, oh crap, Cobra's out in the public taking over a country. We gotta deploy to stop them. And they go in with some like South Korean United Nations forces, whatever. And they fight them to a standstill. But, you know, obviously people are like, hey, all of a sudden there's these really advanced American soldiers on the ground. One of them is a freaking ninja. What's going on here? So hey, G.I. Joe's out in the public now. And then Cobra does this thing where they nuke the entirety of Burma.
What?
Like they just shoot all these nukes into... It all comes down to Craig is like a Burmese dude who as a kid was caught up in like the Opium Wars, and he just got tired of it and was like, may as well destroy Burma. So pretty much this whole thing is because Craig's emo and has childhood issues. But
oh no.
But yeah, Craig, aka Cobra Commander 2, just nukes a country. It's sort of a confusing time, but it's like, oh, this is the worst thing in human history. It's not like there would be any Cybertronians in this universe that could have stopped that or anything. But it all continues. Like, after that point, it pretty much goes downhill for G.I. Joe. Just like with Transformers, like, oh, we just did the biggest story we could possibly do. Now everything sucks because everyone's living in caves, because like the Transformers were living in caves since the humans hate them. Just like G.I. Joe, you have protesters at their base because they're public now. Snake Eyes realizes that Storm Shadow's... there's this complicated thing with Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow that I had to explain because it becomes important later on. But Storm Shadow's like...
love each other.
Kinda.
Gay lovers.
The gay stuff really comes into Transformers, not so much in G.I. Joe. Yet. But, Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes were good friends back when they were kids working with the freaking ninjas and whatever. And Snake Eyes thought Storm Shadow was dead or something, I don't remember. But he sees Storm Shadow when, you know, Cobra's destroying Burma. And he's like, oh, that's my old friend / rival. And he meets with...
Greg.
Yeah,
Greg.
yeah. Thought he got killed back in elementary
Greg
school.
was me. What's up, Greg? Nigga, you trying to stab me?
Yeah. But Storm Shadow's like, Snake Eyes, man, you gotta leave G.I. Joe, you gotta help me destroy Cobra. Because during the whole Cobra Civil War thing, where like the championship is to kill as many G.I. Joes as possible, Craig kind of used the Yakuza, Storm Shadow's buddies, as like pawns, I guess, to kill G.I. Joe people, and then the Yakuza just got wiped out. And Storm Shadow's like, with our Japanese honor, we must get revenge for the loss of our boss. And Snake Eyes is like, okay. So Snake Eyes just, with no regards to, you know, previous allegiances or loyalties, leaves G.I. Joe, joins Storm Shadow, and starts this war against Cobra with him. So G.I. Joe eventually sees Snake Eyes working with Storm Shadow, like, did Snake Eyes just leave us? And like, apparently. And so eventually Snake Eyes is declared, like, you know, a wanted criminal. Is kicked out of G.I. Joe, but that will come important later. Cobra's out in public, and from this point on, Cobra loses its coolness, because before it's like, oh, we're working in the shadows. From this point on, it's like, we really need to get a seat at the United Nations, guys. And I don't know about you, but I don't think trying to get a seat at the United Nations is an interesting story compared to a secret evil organization.
Hang on. I just had this great scene in my head. Alright, we are going to start the conversations with global warming. We're the Dominator!
Yeah.
No. Kurt, where the fuck your name is. No, we don't need to wait. But we have one! Why the fuck you what Dominator? Tax reasons!
Tax reasons, that's yeah. That would be what would happen.
Later on, they're sitting in front of the tax collectors. All right, so you have 4,000 employees that you're calling tax write-offs. Under here it says expenditures? Oh, no. That's supposed to say expendable. Okay. What about healthcare plan? What's that? It's like when you pay for the healthcare. Oh, they're not gonna last that long. Okay. Any kind of life insurance? No. Okay. Just like start doing things legally, but still do villain shit.
It's funny you bring up legalness, because G.I. Joe does the same thing with the fact that we go from a secret American organization to an organization that the federal government is upset with because they failed to stop Burma being nuked to death. So from this point on, their plot lines involve trying to get federal funding.
I'm still here. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I got you. Then we can just listen to this chill lo-fi music.
Cobra!
Ah, yes, precisely. But yeah, from this point on, G.I. Joe's just trying to fight for federal funding. It's crap. But, so you have Cobra trying to be a UN member, G.I. Joe trying to get federal funding, you have protesters outside because, boo, soldiers, because we don't
like weather dominators.
You have the Cybertronians on Cybertron, there's no war, the Autobots don't know what to do, Optimus Prime just, pissed off somewhere. So now we begin, the Costa era has ended, and now begins what I call the Barber Roberts era, because Transformers is divided into 2 series now. They're like, okay, we have the old series that Costa used to run, divide it into 2 series. This series is going to be called Transformers Robots in Disguise. The other series is going to be, wait for it, Transformers More Than Meets the Eye. That won't get confusing in the first few months of us releasing these titles. But they stick a dude called John Barber in charge of Robots in Disguise. And John Barber sort of got fame for... If you watched if you watched 2 Michael Bay Transformer movies, you know the continuity does not make sense between each one. IDW used to make comics for the movie Michael Bay Universe, and John Barber was in charge of that, and they were very continuity heavy. He pretty much made the movie continuity make sense, and people herald him as this great continuity god. So IDW is like, we need some help getting IDW continuity intact, so we're going to stick John Barber in charge of Robots in Disguise to try to fix things. And also, people really, really love James Roberts after Last Stand of the Wreckers. So we're going to give him his own series, his own ongoing series, More Than Meets the Eye. And Barber's story focuses on Bumblebee trying to lead Cybertron, and it's very, politics heavy at the beginning, oh, Bumblebee's trying to gather votes so he can have this democratic election. And, but the Decepticon candidate for this political system is Starscream, and Starscream's this opportunist who knows how to talk his way out of things. Oh, but there's this neutral faction led by freaking Metalhawk or whatever that's like, oh, we just want peace, man, we're hippies. But that doesn't mean we won't beat the crap out of Autobots or Decepticons, because we just hate everyone for this war. So it's just a bunch of, electoral vote gathering until Megatron shows up. Chaos ends with Megatron kind of ending up in the wilderness, and
He just lost in the woods.
Yeah, that's an exactly a concise. That's concise.
He dropped off in the fucking Great Redwoods of California.
That's exactly what.
Starscream. Starscream.
Yeah, he's in the wilderness.
What am I? 3 years later.
Mm.
Hey guys, go play in these woods. Get out of my woods.
Yeah. That's pretty much a summary of the first season of Robots in Disguise. But More Than Meets the Eye takes James Roberts leads his Autobots with Rodimus. They get on this ship called the Lost Light, and they just go out into space in search of the Knights of Cybertron, because the Knights of Cybertron, think of if in the human era, like during the Renaissance, everyone who lived during the Renaissance period just got on a ship and flew away to make this Renaissance planet, and then we just entered the Dark Ages after that. That's what the Knights of Cybertron are. They were the golden age of Cybertron, and then it just freaking left. And Rodimus is like, hey, if we find those guys and bring them back to Cybertron, they'll tell us what to do now that we have peace. And we don't know how to handle peace because we've been at war for the last 4 million years. So he goes off to do that. And the first season or so of More Than Meets the Eye is great. It does explore sort of political social issues. It sort of establishes the concept that every Cybertronian is gay. But it establishes the concept that every single Cybertronian is pretty much gay. But beyond that, it's pretty good. He obviously seems to run out of... If you look at his work today, it's crap. And it's sad because I love James Roberts during the beginning. Like, Last Stand of the Wreckers was great. But now he's just gone off the rails. He doesn't know what he's doing. And, like, typically I would think if you look at a writer's work, you should see his writing improve. Like, let me take a look at his work from 2009 compared to 2018. Typically, the 2018 should be getting better. No, James Roberts steadily, his work becomes crap. And by the time of today, it's just crap. He keeps dragging on the storylines, keeps doing these fake outs. He's lost his edge, you know. It's sort of sad. Let's see, anything else? Oh, and they also start to do a trilogy of prequels during this time period. Like, oh, we're gonna follow up on Megatron Origin. What happened after, you know, Megatron started his war? We're gonna put Flint Dille in charge of that. Flint Dille was the dude who wrote the original G1 Transformers the movie from 1986. And he's going to write that. But I don't think he got the memo that he was writing in an established continuity because he didn't really reference any other continuity. He just sort of did his own thing. And it left other writers kind of having a problem trying to make his stuff fit into continuity. So that was kind of funny. 2012, they also make Infestation 2, where G.I. Joe fights some Cthulhu monsters. And,
of course.
There's also a Transformers Infestation 2, but instead of being set in the main IDW universe, it's the Hearts of Steel universe, the steampunk Transformers fighting Cthulhu monsters. But then we go into, let's see, 2013, there's this event called Dark Cybertron, where they're like, let's have a crossover between More Than Meets the Eye and Robots in Disguise, and it's the most convoluted crap I've ever seen in comics whatsoever. And I read a lot of comics. There is a lot of convolution in comics. This is the most convoluted event I have ever seen in comics. And if I just had to make a bullet point list of what happens, freaking Shockwave and Bumblebee die, some plot points from the Furman era get wrapped up, Megatron becomes an Autobot, Optimus Prime finally comes back to Cybertron after doing God knows what out in space for the last few years. A lot of female characters are introduced, because you're starting to... Let's look at it this way. If you went to James Roberts' Twitter right now, you'll see him probably effectively being some sort of pundit for the Labour Party of the United Kingdom. He's very much a politics-first guy. And so the identity politics sort of begins to become prominent in IDW's Transformers. That being said, I don't really have a problem with the characters they introduce. Let's see. Just so much happens. Starscream becomes the leader of Cybertron, by the way.
Of course.
Naturally.
He has the crown.
Yes.
And then he gets turned to dust, and he finally has like the infinite spark, whatever it's fucking called.
Well, that's in the movie. But he does wear a crown in IDW when he becomes leader.
Just to make sure everybody knows he's the fucking leader. He's a crown.
Yeah, Megatron becomes an Autobot. Galvatron, which, by the way, Galvatron and Megatron are two different people in this universe. Galvatron comes back and pretty much takes charge of the Decepticons. I'm getting confused looking at my own summary of this event, because so much happens, and yet so much doesn't happen. It's terrible. It gets followed up by a little mini-series called Windblade, where a writer called Marguerite Scott writes Windblade, who's one of the female characters they introduce. And, you know, she's a fairly competent writer, although almost immediately, right out the gate, this rookie writer comes in and is like, by the way, I think Simon Furman is sexist. so
oh, God damn it.
You almost immediately have this scuffle between her and Simon Furman. So you can kind of see the direction IDW is starting to go in from this point on. Let's see. Meanwhile, with G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe's like, IDW is like, let's just stop the crap we're doing. Let's just relaunch some comics. Same continuity. We're just canceling the old comics and bringing in new titles. We'll have a G.I. Joe series about these hip, young, cool kids who now actually have federal funding for a little bit.
So cool.
They actually lose federal funding by the end of it.
Oh,
So we're going to go right back to the federal funding quest. But they also dive more into G.I. Joe lore. They bring up their founder, General Joseph Colton, a.k.a. G.I. Joe. They talk about the Adventure Team, which was basically G.I. Joe's equivalent in the 80s.
The Adventure Team.
The Adventure Team.
That's a fucking lame-ass name.
It originated...
Like the Journeymen or something, but not the fucking Adventure Team.
Listen, man, I don't think people were... So... It was the 60s or 70s when they invented the Adventure Team, and now they're bringing it into the modern comics.
Fucking Christ. Sorry, that actually triggered me a bit.
The Adventure Team.
That legitimately triggered me. I'm actually mad now. Like, I'm legitimately mad they didn't try. They didn't try at all.
Yeah.
Just, look, guys, the Adventure Team.
Hoorah!
Look, what did they do? They go on
Adventures.
Fuck off.
They actually explained that the Adventure Team was like this cheesy 80s American program to create... It's basically the predecessor to G.I. Joe, except they fight communism. And they're like, yeah, let's fight communism. And they're fighting the Soviet Union.
Triggered.
They're fighting this... But they're fighting communism, man. It's all good.
It's fine. No, I've read some Tumblr posts. I'm getting to the point. Just fucking communism. I don't care anymore.
They get action figures made of them in continuity. Like, people love the Adventure Team. It's after sort of the 9/11 era where the American government's like, okay, let's not have our super powerful elite team be like so commercialized in public. And that's when they end the Adventure Team and start G.I. Joe. So they explain more about G.I. Joe lore in this G.I. Joe series. They also back it up with 2 other G.I. Joe series. One's called G.I. Joe Special Missions, and it's like, you know, Scarlet's leading a other branch of G.I. Joe. Nothing really important happens in it. But then there's also G.I. Joe The Cobra Files, written by Mike Costa again, because people really love Mike Costa's Cobra series, and he's still, you know, kicking it. He's still being awesome with his writing consistently.
Fuck, I'm triggered. Shit, I'm trying to get over that. I actually am.
Don't worry, the Adventure Team will pop up again.
No! Let them die with the name! Fuck! The Journeymen or just something. Not the Adventure Team.
No, in the
yourself.
In the 90s, they changed their name to the Action Team. We lost Twisted, guys. We lost Twisted.
Fucking, I'm gonna take action and blow my fucking brains out. No!
I think Twisted's going to commit suicide tonight.
Okay, alright, I'm back.
Alright. Shall we go on?
I'm out of whiskey.
Oh man, I'm so sorry.
Like, actually, I'm overacting just a little bit. Not a lot. I'm actually fairly angry about this for some reason. I don't know why.
But yeah, this wave of G.I. Joe, if you notice, G.I. Joe has a problem with sales, so that's why they keep stopping and restarting these G.I. Joe comics. But this wave of G.I. Joe comes to an end when it's like Duke is like exposed for possibly working with Cobra in the past, and so Duke gets kicked out of G.I. Joe. Scarlet gets put in charge. Cobra Files ends. Cobra Files is sort of about Mike Costa's G.I. Joe team working with a captured Cobra dude called Tomax. And they use Tomax to find the original Cobra Commander's son, the original Cobra Commander who got a bullet to the face. And they find his son. It's like, oh, the Cobra might use this son for some sort of, you know, right to the Cobra throne war or whatever. So they kidnap Cobra Commander's son. But Tomax, being a Cobra dude, is like, aha, I'm actually planning this whole thing out, and he has this whole violent escape plan from the G.I. Joe headquarters. People die. The G.I. Joe characters that Mike Costa writes are all scattered, and they include Flint and Chameleon. Now, Chameleon is sort of like the half-sister to the Baroness, who became a G.I. Joe agent.
Is she Baron?
No.
What an asshole that named her. It's like, and this is Scarlet, awesome, and this is Baron. She can't have kids.
The Baroness.
The Baroness, if you would say. And she's just like, fuck it, I don't care anymore, man. It's like she's depressed because of it.
Oh yeah.
She just found out like an hour before they named her. Shit, that made me sad now. She's like, fuck it, let's destroy the world. Oh, fuck it.
Yeah, the thing to note about Mike Costa's Cobra Files is that it really introduces Flint and Chameleon. And Flint is the original 80s cartoons, G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe cartoon and the Transformers cartoon. In Season 3, I believe, of the Transformers cartoon, there's this character called Marissa Fairborn. And Season 3 of Transformers takes place in the far future of 2005. But they established that Marissa Fairborn is actually the daughter of the G.I. Joe agent Flint. So they're like, so G.I. Joe and Transformers, those cartoons were in a shared universe. And Flint's daughter is a character in Transformers. Marissa Fairborn is actually in the Robots in Disguise series at this point, and she's an adult and all of that. But they sort of talk about she has a mysterious father who she doesn't like her father, but it's like, who is her father? Because this isn't, Transformers and G.I. Joe aren't in the same continuity, so you can't just have two Flints going about in IDW's G.I. Joe series and IDW's Transformers series, so it's like, what are they going to do then? And also, Flint and Chameleon are pretty young in G.I. Joe, and they certainly aren't the age to be the father of Marissa Fairborn.
Yeah, I know that.
So, oh, well, yeah, we don't know that because things are going to get a bit sketchy later on in the timeline. G.I. Joe doesn't...
I'm my own granddad!
But yeah, after this like spectacular conclusion of Duke being kicked out, G.I. Joe losing funding, and Tomax blowing up everything, G.I. Joe doesn't come back until 2014, where IDW is like, let's I know our G.I. Joe series keep getting canceled. Let's just try to keep it alive as much as possible. So they start this series called G.I. Joe: The Fall of G.I. Joe, and the entire plot. They're like, okay, I know the previous two series people didn't like because of the whole trying to get tax funding for the G.I. Joe organization and how that's boring. We're gonna make the entire point of the fall of G.I. Joe nothing but trying to get tax money. Also, Cobra is a peacekeeping organization that's used by the United Nations now. Also, it takes place 5 years after the last series. Also, where did Craig, the Cobra Commander, go? We don't know. We're just gonna toss him out and say Tomax is the leader now. We're not gonna explain where the Cobra Commander is. Oh, we're gonna recognize that he exists. We're gonna have him on propaganda posters that looks like Uncle Sam pointing like, we want you on a recruitment poster. So we're going to establish that, yeah, the Cobra Commander does exist. We're not going to ignore that, but he's not in command of Cobra. That would be ridiculous, wouldn't it? So the fall of G.I. Joe is an absolute mess. The writer does not know what they're doing. It takes place 5 years, and it's about as entertaining as I just made it sound. It was originally slated for 12 issues. It gets canceled for 8, and the writer doesn't bother to wrap up the storylines. So it sort of just happens. The fall of G.I. Joe happens, and that's it. For all we know, after the fall of G.I. Joe is completely defunded. G.I. Joe no longer exists. Cobra is a peacekeeping organization that rules the world pretty much by being part of the UN. The end. God, as long as nobody decides to restart that G.I. Joe continuity in 2016, then hey, it might be a fine ending. But also in 2015, Mike Costa gets brought back to write another G.I. Joe book called Snake Eyes, Agent of Cobra, where he's like, oh, also in this 5-year time gap, Snake Eyes, who we haven't seen since he's been working with Storm Shadow to destroy Cobra, he's just working for Cobra now. He just stopped working with Snake Eyes against Cobra. He's just part of Cobra now. Snake Eyes fights him, and Storm Shadow fights Snake Eyes, and Snake Eyes kills Storm Shadow. And actually a fairly good written story, because it's Mike Costa. He's the god at writing G.I. Joe. And it's like, okay, it's still in this strange time period. Tomax is still the leader of Cobra. Cobra Commander is nowhere to be seen. There's this weird civil war going on between Destro and Tomax, but it doesn't really get touched on ever again. And it ends with Snake Eyes staying an agent of Cobra. And you would think the whole point would be him like going back to G.I. Joe. Nope. So it's a good story. Doesn't really do anything as far as plot advancement that goes. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, that would be a fine, I guess, way to end G.I. Joe. Never bring it back. They're gonna bring it back. Let's see. Meanwhile, Transformers is still more than meets the eyes falling apart. Robots in Disguise is actually getting more interesting. It's about Galvatron and Optimus Prime fighting each other on Earth. It's almost as if the war's back, but not entirely. Megatron as an Autobot is now a co-captain with Rodimus, searching for the Knights of Cybertron. They're starting to supplement their Transformer books with more miniseries. Like there's a series called Punishment for... and by the love of me, I can't remember what happened in it. It was so boring. Sean McCarthy, who wrote All Hail Megatron, is brought back to write more about his Sonic OC Drift with a miniseries called Drift Empire of Stone. Marguerite Scott, the woman who was in a battle of calling Simon Furman a sexist, is put in charge of a new ongoing series about Windblade, her female character. And so that happens. And it's actually brought in for an event called Combiner Wars, which is boring. But we can skip that. There's also another one-shot called Redemption. Last Stand of the Wreckers gets a sequel called Sins of the Wreckers, but it's written by Nick Roche, and James Roberts has nothing to do with it, so it's kind of boring. Then a holiday special comes out. Even though you can sort of see the quality plateauing, IDW Transformers is at a almost popularity all-time high at this point. Then something interesting happens in 2016. IDW gets the rights to publish comics for Action Man, which was like is the British equivalent of G.I. Joe, because like when you're selling G.I. Joe toys across the world, G.I. Joe is kind of very American. So if you want to advertise it to Britain, say, oh, this isn't G.I. Joe, this is Action Man, and he's British. And are you as triggered by Action Man as you were Adventure Team?
Actually, no.
Huh. All right. So IDW gets the right to Action Man. Oh yeah, Adventure Team. But IDW gets the rights to Action Man. It gets the rights to publish ROM, which was a...
Adventure Man would piss me off.
Yeah, I think there's no Adventure Man. IDW gets the right to publish ROM, which was a Marvel character back in the day, but now, because it was like with some toy company, the legal rights were sort of up in the air, but now IDW owns ROM. And they also get the rights to publish Micronauts comics, which Micronauts sort of was a predecessor to Transformers.
It's still around?
Is what still around?
Is ROM still a thing?
The toys aren't. The comics were briefly in 2016 to 2017, but that's a bit of a spoiler because, well, surprise, surprise, not a lot of people buy ROM. But yeah, IDW gets the rights to make Action Man, ROM, and Micronauts comics. Action Man, a miniseries by about Action Man is being released with John Barber, the famous Transformers writer, in charge of it. ROM starts off, and Micronauts under the Deadpool writer Cullen Bunn actually starts up. Micronauts starts out interesting because they reference transwarp and space, sort of like the space bridge technology, which is sort of transformery. But it's like, but this is just a separate. Maybe it's just a reference, sort of. Hey, IDW's famous for making Transformer comics, and then eventually, Marguerite Scott's Windblade series becomes Till All Are One because surprise, surprise, you can't write an entire ongoing series about one character unless it's like a superhero. Let's see. It also Till All Are One gets pretty political. IDW's Transformers. The Transformer series by John Barber does this thing called All Hail Optimus, where Optimus just takes over the Earth. And basically Optimus's argument is Galvatron kept just attacking Earth because it's important or something, whatever. I won't get into the details about... Okay. Earth is important because in the ancient... yeah, Earth is important because in the ancient past, Cybertronians made colonies, and Earth is kind of a colony, but like...
There's not kind of a colony. Was it a colony or was it not a colony?
According to, I guess, the religious scriptures, it's okay, you know Metroplex? You know the big dude who turns into a city?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
In IDW, there are a bunch of Metroplexes, and you can tell what in the ancient past, Cybertronians fled Cybertron because there was another war before the Autobot-Decepticon War, and they fled Cybertron on these metroplexes, and they settled on different planets and established colonies. And
Plan to colonize this world.
And wherever there's a planet with these metroplexes, there's typically a Cybertronian colony. Earth, during All Hail Optimus, Galvatron knows where the colonies are because he's really old. But Galvatron keeps attacking Earth because he knows Earth's a colony. But how can it be a colony? Because there's no native Transformers there. And as far as we know, there's no Metroplex there. So Optimus is fighting them and is just like, we have to take over Earth. You know, we got to put it under Cybertronian protection. Because Cybertron at this time is making contact with all these colonies, and they're establishing this Council of Worlds where they're like pretty much a new Cybertronian empire, where Cybertron's like, oh, we found our colonies again. Let's be friends. Let's be one political institution again. And then while Optimus is taking over Earth, a freaking Metroplex pops out of the ground. And it's like, oh god, this is a colony. What happened to the Transformers? Why is there a Metroplex just sitting here? And there's all that crap. So Earth is a colony world. And that's why Galvatron was attacking it, and that's why Optimus took over Earth. And that's called All Hail Optimus. And then following All Hail Optimus, an interesting happens called Titans Returns, where the title has pretty much nothing to do with the story, but it's just because there was a toy line going on called Titans Return. But the American government's like, Jesus Christ, guys, Optimus Prime just took over the Earth. We're going to have to stop it. Let's get our really powerful secret elite team, who has totally been here the entire time, bring in G.I. Joe. And then Joe Cullen just walks in and is like, don't worry, G.I. Joe's got this. And everyone's asking questions like, what do you mean G.I. Joe's got this? What are you doing here? This isn't your universe. 1, Infestation clearly stated you were 2 different universes. 2, where were you when Megatron took over the Earth? 3, what? 4, what were the Cybertronians doing when you nuked Burma? Like,
what?
And IDW is like, are they the same universe? And then all of a sudden Action Man starts talking about, remember that time Megatron took over Earth? That was crazy, wasn't it? And all of a sudden Micronauts is like, oh, we found this weird portal, and there's like, oh, there's this other Earth out there, and it has big people, including these big giant robots. And then Rom's just like, oh, I finally arrived on Earth after my years of fighting dire wraiths in space, and I find out the Cybertronians are here too. And then IDW's like, it's a shared universe, guys. And which led to a lot of disdain from the Transformers fan base. What are these posts in Discord?
I just found that little picture.
Yeah.
Keep talking. I'll give you 1 minute.
Well, I can give you 1 minute. We can chill with that lo-fi. You know, how loud is that lo-fi for you guys? If I was to suddenly do a like a rap, an impromptu rap to the beats, would I look retarded? Well, I would look retarded either way, but would I look retarded in the sense that there would be no music for it? So this is Primus Prime time, and we're all chill. It's time for us to eat cyanide pills. Yo, I don't know why it's time for that, but I guess suicide's the answer if you look at it that way. Yeah, I can't rhyme even with the slow time, with the slow metronome. I just don't know what to do, my gnome. Yeah. Primus Prime. He has a time, and it's a channel. And it's a flannel. I don't really wear flannels. I wore one once, and it was weird. This is an SD card. I'm playing with an SD card, yeah. I hope Twisted comes back so I can stop this rap, but until then, I just gotta say, what the crap, man? I don't know who I am anymore. Why are we here? Just to suffer? Every night, I can feel my leg. And it's just, you know, it's hard to deal with. Fire lit. Thank you, thank you, thank you. while we're waiting on Twisted, guys, there is a Discord link in the description. If you, we want sort of in the future to possibly do phone calls and calls with the audience, and we need more people in Discord for that. So feel free to join in. Did that track have like a dog in it? That was weird, wasn't it? Yo, straight from the heart of North Carolina. What rhymes with Carolina? I don't know. That was a bad word to pick. But here I am, and I'm trying to make my rhymes be slick. Yo, that didn't go with the beat, but I'm in my seat. And I am not a neat, yo. Some might say otherwise, but one of the E's in neat means educationalized. And you know I'm going school because that's so cool, and I'm gonna be I ain't no fool. I'm so glad like Ultrox ablaze.
Ain't no fool because I'm gonna be teaching school.
Ain't no fool because I'm gonna be teaching. Hey, I like it.
You like it, yeah.
I like it. So yeah, we were all of a sudden there's a shared universe in the IDW universe, which doesn't make sense. At least not at this stage. But IDW sets up this event called Revolution, where basically yada 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 the Micronauts come into the main universe. A lot of fighting happens. It's mostly just, you know, it's sort of like a get-to-know-you party. Like the first meeting of a club in high school where you're just sort of getting to know each other. That's basically what Revolution was. It was, oh, hey, Optimus Prime, I'm Rom. I can just flip you over. Also, they introduced Mask. They bring in Mobile Armored Strike Command, of all things, into the IDW universe, and that was an 80s cartoon.
Command isn't spelled with a K!
It is now! And after Revolution, IDW's like, all right, here is the new slate of stories, of titles. We have Optimus Prime. We're going to cancel Transformers, have the same writer, and change the title to Optimus Prime. Not Transformers Optimus Prime, just Optimus Prime. We're going to change the name of James Roberts' More Than Meets the Eye, which, by the way, at this point sucks. And we're going to just change it to Transformers Lost Light, because that's the name of the ship. And that won't be confusing for people just walking into the store looking for titles and just saying Transformers Lost Light. More Than Meets the Eye has much more meaning to Transformer fans than Lost Light. But that story is going to continue, unfortunately. We're going to start a new series called Mask Mobile Armored Strike Command. And it's frankly one of the weakest lines in the one of the weakest titles in the line. You know, all the love to Brandon Easton, you know, he's pretty cool, but his book was... Mask needed some work, let's say it like that. Also, we're going to bring back G.I. Joe, and it's going to be written by this dude called Aubrey Sitterson. Does the name Aubrey Sitterson ring a bell to you, Twisted?
No.
He's going to be the dude that will go on to say, effectively say, you know, don't mourn the Holocaust if you weren't there. I mean, don't mourn 9/11 if you weren't there. Do you remember my whole I'm done with IDW?
I remember all that.
That was in reaction to Aubrey Sitterson. Aubrey Sitterson is a self-professed socialist. And frankly, I think having a socialist in charge of G.I. Joe is a very interesting choice, especially given the type of people who are G.I. Joe fans. Like, how many socialists do you think are real fans of G.I. Joe? Two? You know, I think that's a generous number. When I think of G.I. Joe,
I'm saying two because I know there's a couple probably how do I put this? There's a word another word. Sociopathic socialists.
Oh yeah.
That is like the idea of the world not being what they want to be.
But here's the thing with G.I. Joe. As we talked about when we last talked about G.I. Joe is in this situation where it has a lot of questions that need to be answered. You need a writer for G.I. Joe that knows what he's doing, that knows the continuity of the previous G.I. Joe work, knows how to fit G.I. Joe into the IDW universe, and I mean past continuity, try to reconcile all that. Aubrey Sitterson is not that person. He just takes a random combination of G.I. Joe characters, doesn't bother to ask the question, where's Cobra Commander? He makes G.I. Joe a United Nations organization and not a United States organization. I actually don't have too much... When it comes to Aubrey Sitterson's writing, I actually don't have too much of his writing in the moment. I don't like how he overall... Like, the overall direction of his... Like, it's hard to explain. Like, I can pick up an Aubrey Sitterson book and say, yeah, this is pretty good. But all I know is, except this doesn't make sense in continuity, it actually spits in the face of the legacy of G.I. Joe for most of this. My big problem with Aubrey Sitterson is him as a person, and that's going to be a running thing from this point out, because from this point out, the writers of IDW are crap. James Roberts has gone off the deep end. Aubrey Sitterson is Aubrey Sitterson, who's constantly arguing with the G.I. Joe fan base. Marguerite Scott, still not really that good writer, not so good as a person. Brandon Easton's okay, but his writing of Mask was subpar, I think. ROM, Micronauts, and Transformers Till All Are One continue after Revolution, except Till All Are One eventually gets canceled because of low sales. Revolutionary starts up as a title by John Barber, where pretty much all the questions you have about the IDW universe, like how does this work? John Barber not only answers all those questions, but brings it together in an actual good story, and that's why he's known as the God of Continuity. And the thing is, a lot of the way he answers a lot of the questions of the new G.I. Joe Transformers hybrid universe is through the Adventure Team. So a lot of the issues focus around the Adventure. The Adventure Team, Twisted, is the key to all of this.
No, I do not accept it.
The Adventure Team is key.
I will accept Energon cubes being Transformers eggs before I accept that as a name.
The Adventure Team is the key. They eventually changed their name to the Action Team, and they established that in Revolutionaries. They sort of established that... They sort of take away the whole...
Wasn't very revolutionary.
They take away the concept of... Because originally when it was introduced, the Adventure Team was supposed to be fighting communism. But this is 2017, man. We can't fight communism. Real communism has never been tried, bro! So they take away the sort of anti-communist aspect of the Adventure Team and just have them fight, like, robots and stuff like that. And then there's like, oh, we discovered a Cybertronian artifact in Egypt or whatever, and stuff like that. So Revolutionaries, through the Adventure Team, ties everything together. You're welcome.
No.
No. Oh. What's this? General...
Selfies.
Why are you posting selfies? Oh. Okay. That's weird.
I've gone too deep, man.
Oh. Oh, is that a VR headset?
No, that's the
oh, it's a
part.
welding
It's
type
not.
thing? Like for the Gundam?
It's a magnification goggles.
Oh, boy.
Hang on, I took a bad picture a minute ago. I'll just fucking post it. Screw it there. There, fuck it, I did it.
Oh, man. Jesus Christ. But yeah.
I've gone too deep, man.
Indeed. But IDW keeps trying to sell this concept that you don't have to understand the other books to understand Transformers, because the Transformer fans are the ones that are most vocally pissed. They're also the largest community in it. So they release like Transformers Salvation. They're like, we're still making these Transformers only books. Not really, because in 2017 they come out with ROM versus the Transformers, which is sort of set. It takes place in the past. It's ROM versus the Transformers. They make the Hasbro Hero Source book, which is like an encyclopedia. They make Micronauts, The Wrath of Karza, which carries on, it's pretty much Micronauts versus Transformers and everyone else.
Yay, Macronauts.
What?
You said Macronauts.
Well, I mean Micronauts. It's been a long day.
Imagine Micronauts with an Apple logo in the middle of the chest.
Oh yeah.
Shit, they've now heard me. Are gonna make it happen.
But by 2017, sales are bad. G.I. Joe gets canceled after Aubrey Sitterson makes his comments about 9/11, and then everyone talks crap about it. That's when I
agree with them.
That's when I drop off of IDW. That's when from this point on, I haven't really read IDW. I read bits and pieces here and there. Sometimes I tried to give it a shot once, and that was during First Strike, and we'll get to that, but that was terrible, so I just got out immediately. G.I. Joe gets canceled because the writer's a terrible person. Mask ends, ROM ends, Micronauts ends. Eventually, like, all you have is the Transformer books, pretty much. A series called First Strike happens, which is pretty much the sequel to Revolutionaries. Revolution. If Revolution was everyone getting to know each other, First Strike is all of them getting together to play in a multiplayer game, I guess. Because humans that aren't exactly Cobra, it's like an alliance of all the human villains of all these different franchises, come together and invade Cybertron. And you would think humans invading Cybertron wouldn't be much of an interesting plot. And so they have to go through a lot of contrivances to make it an actual plot instead of humans invade Cybertron. Oh no, they immediately die. Because, you can't just invade Cybertron and not be a Cybertronian or some sort of huge metal creature. But First Strike's terrible. I tried reading First Strike. They retcon a lot of stuff. G.I. Joe originally was this secretive organization of like the most elite people. They sort of retcon it into being sort of this organization that G.I. Joe recruited army soldiers who really couldn't keep up with the military, and because that sort of you can't just tell people no. You can't just say you're not trained enough. You can't say you're not skilled enough. Everyone is valuable. Everyone is worth something. So we're going to take you into G.I. Joe and prove that you can do something good. So it pretty much turns G.I. Joe into the participation trophy team. Which,
G.I. Joe!
Yeah, it turns G.I. Joe into a collection of autistic children. And that's how they're written from that point on. After First Strike ends, by the way, at this point, the sales are terrible. IDW has lost, I think, 90% of its revenue. People are boycotting it. People are hating the writers. There are politics that are surpassing continuity. Pretty much most people hate it. It's clear that this has to end sometime. First Strike ends with Cybertron just randomly sending out a signal into space and activating Unicron. So, we're going to talk a bit about Unicron later. But after First Strike, IDW is like, well, no, man, we still have a shared universe. Look, Optimus Prime still going on. Lost Light still going on. G.I. Joe might be canceled and Mask might be canceled. But here, have this series called Scarlet Strike Force. Where it's just Aubrey Sitterson writing G.I. Joe. Oh no, you hate Aubrey Sitterson. Let me cancel at issue 3 and not give him a chance to wrap up his storylines. So that gets canceled that gets canceled before it gets released. It's amazing. Okay, ROM and Micronauts were canceled, I guess, but hey, we'll put it into one title, ROM and the Micronauts, because they obviously are so closely connected that they obviously must do well in one series. Jesus Christ, no, it's like the most cramped thing. It gets canceled at like 6 issues, I think. Okay, so we totally have a shared universe, guys, even though all we have is a Transformer book and a Transformer book. But we're still a shared universe, guys. It's like trying to have a shared universe. Let's say we have the DC universe, but we're only making Batman comics. Which, to be fair, that might actually help DC sales a bit. But so it's obviously everything's going down the drain. 2018, Mags Visaggio gets put in charge of a mini-series called Transformers vs. the Visionaries. And I'm not really sure how much of Mag's work is actually Transformers vs. the Visionaries, because it seems very editorialized. Like, it looks like a lot of corporate stuff, like, oh, we're just trying to bring in this franchise before we end everything. So we're just going to kill as many Cybertronians as possible, including, like, Cup, who's been important since the beginning of the Furman years. And at this point, you start to see that the writers aren't really holding back with killing characters. People are dying left and right. It's like, wow, people keep dying left and right. It's not like they're going to end the universe, are they? They announced that they're going to end the universe. With,
Spoiler alert.
they say, all right. First, they try to toy with you, saying, okay, Optimus Prime and Lost Light will go on for this many issues, and then it will end. Like, okay. Also, this Unicron series is going to come out. It'll be 6 issues. And, like, people are like, well, will this end the universe? And, oh, we're not going to say anything. And some people are like, it's not going to end the universe, you fools. Because, look, if you look at the monthly schedule of releases, Optimus Prime and Lost Light will carry on after Unicron. And all of a sudden, they pull this surprise, we're going to be making 2 issues a month. Like, we're gonna double ship them. So, yeah, everything's gonna end after Unicron. And then the IDW Universe is over, and we're gonna say we intend to make a new IDW Universe after the current IDW Universe. But so far, we really haven't seen too much of that actually happen. And I think there's rumors, and this hasn't been confirmed, so this is just hearsay, but there's rumors that their license with Hasbro is gonna run out soon, and Hasbro will have to choose to renew it or not. And with how IDW has been ruining everything, with these new writers, Hasbro might just change the license, change who can make the comics. Yeah. So that's how it is. I believe this summer or just after this summer, there's going to be the Unicron event, and then the IDW Universe will be concluded. What started as a small little project with Simon Furman just delicately trying to make his little universe just exploded into utter crap. And incapable writers, it just all fell apart, man. And it's sad, because I was a huge fan of the IDW Universe up until like 2016, 2017-ish. And just to see, it's like getting a really cool car you really love, and you just love being in the car, and then some retarded driver gets in and just like, oh cool, swerves off the interstate and crashes into a school bus, and then it blows up and all the children die. So that's my ode to the IDW Universe, this explanation of how everything went to crap.
Started with 9/11.
It all started with 9/11. So that's how not to run a comic universe. Which, by the way, Twisted, were you here for the stream? This was before Primus Prime Time. But were you here for the stream where I was talking about sort of the universe I made as an elementary school student, like these comics I made, and how I just kept...
Yeah, I heard you talking about that.
Yeah, that's going public. In fact, the Google Drive, I'm going to be editing it, and I'm going to be annotating it.
Is that thing you were asking about earlier?
Yeah. I'm going to be editing and annotating it, so, like, some of these PDF files have my real name in it, so I don't want that in it, for introductions and stuff like that. So I'm going to edit it a bit, then annotate it and say, here I rip off this anime, and here I rip off this Star Wars movie. Sort of give my thought process. But since I continue that universe, I'm also going to be putting new releases there. And I'm actually trying to improve my writing. And for some reason, I just have this principle that when I write fiction, I always write in the same universe. So I'm going to be writing... I've always been writing, but I'll be making that public. I'm going to actually trying to be improving my writing. So from this point on, there'll be a Google Drive. And check my Twitter, because I'm going to be posting on Twitter. And maybe Discord. Maybe in the Primus Prime Time channel on Discord. I'm going to be saying, alright, here's the link. There's going to be an introduction pamphlet to, sort of your guide to my fictional writing universe. I'm going to be putting new releases and gradually putting old backlog stories, I guess. So that's going to be coming. Keep an eye out for that, like in the coming hours, even. If Twisted Ambition can confirm my Google Drive after this stream's done.
Yep.
Don't worry, it's crap, guys.
But it's our crap.
It's our crap, yeah, I guess. Except for the parts where, it's just, a middle schooler plagiarizing from an anime.
But it's... okay, yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, that's a minority of the content.
Sure.
I'm positive.
Okay.
How long have we been going for? Oh, about 1 hour for... Oh, we're reaching the point where we have to end this. Sorry, Twisted. I know this wasn't really one of the topics you could have, contributed to a lot, but it was an ode, to a bygone day.
No, I've fun. Like I said, I'm not really into Transformers too much, but I always liked watching videos.
Well, thank you, thank you. We're 5 episodes into season 1 of Primus Prime Time. Your season 1 will end in episode 10. How do you feel as we approach? We're at the halfway point of season 1. We're halfway in that trying phase. We're like, do we really want to do this with season 1? What do you feel about that? We're halfway through.
I think it's going fine so far.
Yeah, fairly.
It's going fine so far. Eventually, I mean, you have stuff planned out for like at least this season, right?
Yeah, ish. In fact, I think it's after this episode that I'm going to share with you the Google Doc for ideas, so you can add your ideas for what you want to talk about.
Oh yeah. Just so you guys know, that's what I've been dealing with this entire time. Is I know like the week ahead of time we're going to talk about more than likely, but I haven't been. I can't do anything. I don't have any approval. I'm just here out of like I'm a hostage.
I don't know what we'll talk about next time. Maybe we'll talk about Halo. Sort of do the thing I did with Ultrox, except with you and Halo.
Oh God, jeez. Wait, do you know my love of Halo?
No, and I think we can save that for that episode for next week, maybe.
I know everything about Halo.
Oh
everything.
Boy.
With Halo, I am you a Transformer.
Oh, nice. And yeah, this is, by the way, this is
everything.
This is the last time we're talking about Transformers on this channel. I know I said that before, but this is sort of an exception because it's it's a exceptional time right now. From this point on,
make sure to stay informed for Halo lore.
From Halo lore. Yeah, after this episode, the ban on Transformer content is back in full effect. But yeah, I think we need to end this episode. Not like end my life. I think I need to commit suicide now.
That's next month.
That's next month. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Remember, there's a Discord link in the description. If you don't join the Discord link, you might be dead to me. I think I should just end it off at that sentence. That's it.